بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أهلا وسهلا بكم في سادس الليالي السبرانية التي تقدم لكم من الاتحاد السعودي للأمن السبراني والبرمجة والدرونز بالشراكة مع شريك والموكل الرقمي STC. اليوم في آخر أيام دورة Next Generation SOC، بس احنا لازلنا مستمرين في الليالي السبرانية في الأيام القادمة كذلك إن شاء الله. بنتكلم اليوم في محاضرة عن الانسيدنت ريسبونس بس قبل ما ندخل في تفاصيل المحاضرة هذه ومن يقدمها، أذكركم بالمشاركة في المسابقتين المقدمة لكم مع سايبر نايتس، استخدام هاشتاج سايبر نايتس وكتابة كل ما تعلمته في كل محاضرة مستقلة. هذه المسابقة أفضل ثريد وعليها 3 جوائز مالية مقدمة من الاتحاد السعودي للأمن السبراني والبرمجة والدرونز، وكذلك مسابقة الاختبار الشامل. هذا الوقت مناسب جدا لإعداد العدة والاستعداد للتعرف على علوم جديدة. فبعد ما مارسنا وإياكم وتعمقنا في البرمجة خلال أيام الهوماثون، جاء الدور الآن لتقديم الحلول والأفكار في مجال الأمن السبراني، ومن هنا بدت أو انطلقت فكرة سايبر نايتس. فهذه المسابقتين جاهزة ومستمرة. الاختبار الشامل راح يكون في النهاية، بس استخدام هاشتاج سايبر نايت لمسابقة أفضل ثريد هذا شيء إحنا نحفزكم عليه. والله يوفقكم جميعا. إذا في أي سؤال لك في أي محاضرة حضرتها اسأله في الهاشتاج. شفنا ناس كثير في الهاشتاج تستخدمه لتبادل المعرفة، وهذا شيء جدا عظيم ودائما ما ندمه احنا في الاتحاد. محاضرة اليوم راح تكون باللغة الإنجليزية كذلك، ولكن سيتم ترجمة أفضل ما قدم فيها وعرضه عبر منصاتنا كذلك. اسمحوا لي بننتقل للغة الإنجليزية. مستر زبير شوقلي. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Mr. Zubair is a senior consultant with the Logarithm Company. He is going to talk to us today about incident response in the Next Generation SOC course. Mr. Zubair, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yasser. Am I audible?
If you can start sharing the screen now.
I can, yeah.
Great.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much, Yasser, for the introduction, and a very warm welcome to everyone who has joined for today's session. And today's session is about incident response and incident response plan. And I'd like to first start by giving a big thank you to the Saudi Federation for Cybersecurity Programming in Drones for arranging these cyber nights and allowing us to be part of this. It's an honor and a pleasure to be part of it. Now, before I start with my slides, I would just like to do a bit of a recap, wherein you've heard my colleagues over the last 3 or 4 days or 4 evenings talk about different areas pertaining to SOC and the next generation SIM platform. On Saturday, you heard Mr. Rami Ahmed, my colleague, talk about next generation SOC, what it constitutes, the people aspect, the platform aspect, as well as the process aspect. On Sunday, you heard Rami again talk about the next generation SOC capabilities, how it needs to manage or have the capability of managing an end-to-end threat lifecycle. Last night, you heard my colleague Ashok talk about threat hunting and how we all can think as an attacker and look at or identify the different threats within our organization using a logarithm as a platform as well. Now, on day one, on Saturday, Rami mentioned the people, process, and technology. Over the last 3 evenings, we have been talking about the technology and the people. Today's session is all about the process aspect of it and how we can tie all of these together. Having said that, my name is Zubair Chaugle. I am the Senior Solutions Consultant for Logarithm for the IMETA region. I will be talking to you in about an hour and a half's time as to what constitutes an incident response and what is required to build an incident response plan. So tonight is all about processes, how you can tie the multiple aspects together so you have a next generation SOC built for your organization. Just to set the agenda for tonight. I will start with a brief introduction about myself, followed by a topic on the global threat pandemic, wherein we will look at the different breaches or the different attacks that have been occurring in the wild since 2006 up to 2020. Then we'll move on to incident and incident management, wherein this will lead into the topic of tonight, which is the incident response plan. But before that, I will explain to you what is an incident or what could be an incident management. Followed by, we'll be talking about the incident response and what are the stages of incident response. Just on a high level, what needs to be done when a particular incident within an organization is detected. We will then go into our topic, which is our incident response plan, which why it is important. Why do organizations need an incident response plan? What constitute a component of incident response plan? What are the requirements of an incident response plan? What is required to build an incident response plan? As well as a demo of how Logarithm can facilitate or be the platform that can help you drive your incident response for the organization. So yeah, moving on. Then we'll have a question answer session, wherein you can whatever questions you have, please feel free to ask during the sessions. Now about myself, I've been working for Logarithm for almost 5 years now. I have over 15 years experience in IT. Started my career as a network engineer, looking at systems, network security side of things. Moved into pre-sales. Last 6 to 8 years I have been into the security analytics, SIM, incident response, and the vulnerability management space. And then I have a few certifications as well, as part of my career growth. So yeah, that's more about it. I'm working as a senior solutions consultant for Logarithm for this region as well. So let's start with our first slide, which talks to you about the modern cyber threat pandemic. Now you might have heard about the breaches, you might have heard about the attacks, the cyber attacks that a lot of organizations face, right? But those are bits and pieces. How do they look like in a full cluster? Now this particular slide will open a lot of eyes for a lot of us. It did for me as well, wherein there are two components to this slide. Okay, the first component is what are the data breaches and how they move over the last 6 to 10 years. The second component is what are the types of breaches that have been observed or that led to these. What are the type of attacks that led to these breaches, right? So if you can see from 2006, when this slide starts, basically when the data starts, we had 94 million odd records lost. Okay, over a period of time, this has only gradually increased. Now, it's not that these organizations didn't have the necessary controls or the necessary technologies in place. Unfortunately, security a lot of times is a catch-up, wherein we think that we have deployed the latest and the greatest of tools out there, but still it does fall short. And as you can see, these organizations, they have been at the receiving end. Now these are breaches, and these are breaches that have been disclosed. Now some organizations disclosed it out of choice, some of them disclosed it out of force because they were part of a big so the regulations like ISOs or PCIs, etc. Now, what are the attacks that cause these breaches? If you see, a lot of them were organizations that were hacked by the bad guys, by the cyber criminals, using different techniques or technologies over a period of time. Some of them were insider job. That employee who knows that he will probably get fired in a few days or weeks. That employee who will be probably joining a competition, or that employee who's just frustrated by his or her manager. So there are a lot of organizations wherein breaches happened and investigations found out that it was an insider job. um, lot of organizations also got breached because of poor security. As you can see, some of the names here, like Citigroup, Uber in 2016 or 17, Mozilla, New York taxis, etc. These organizations got breached because of poor security. It could be any reason. It could be a budget constraint, for example, for some organizations, or it could be they were just plain lazy, or probably they thought that they had implemented everything that is required to secure their systems. But as we know, hackers are most of the times are one step ahead of us. Then there are some wherein the data was accidentally published. Now, you are aware that a lot of organizations these days are moving to the cloud. People are using Azure or Google or Alibaba or AWS cloud for hosting their workloads. What happens is a thinking or an assumption by a lot of security people is that data, because I'm hosting my data with my SaaS provider, it is secure. Results have found out that it is not always the case. They are secure to an extent, but then we still need to implement the proper controls. And point in case example for those are, you might have heard about AWS buckets being exposed online, wherein some hacker accidentally landed up there, and they got a whole lot of data from these organizations. Accidental data publishing is also one of the reasons why a lot of organizations were attacked. One of the other reasons that was observed was a lost or stolen computer or media. Now, how many of us have been in a situation wherein our laptops got stolen, or we forgot our USB drive at a coffee shop, and then when we left the coffee shop, we did not take it with us. Now, that might seem small, but then that USB drive can contain anything. It could contain uh, your organization data. It could contain your own personal information, maybe your credit card numbers, maybe your bank account details, etc., or just the details about your social activities, your pictures. Now, this is important. These are breaches, these are records that hackers or the bad guys prey upon. They are waiting for these things to reach out to them. Now, if you look at in 2006, the number of breaches that was disclosed were 321. Moving on in 2010, 4 years down the line, it nearly tripled. Now, these are the breaches that have been disclosed. Following in 2015, there were close to 3,930 breaches that were disclosed by the various organizations. Now, if you see this number is only increasing, and the reason is the because of the amount of data that we are seeing, the data the exponential growth of data that we are seeing, the amount of the threat landscape is changing, the attack surface is increasing. Gone are the days when IT was only about a server and a laptop or a cell phone. Now you have terminologies like IT, IoT, OT, and all of these can be hacked by the bad guys. So the more the attack surface, the larger is the breaches, as you can see. And not to mention, the more complex it gets to protect or secure all of these, right? Now, just a comparison on the right, as you can see, in 2010 there were 96 million records that were stolen, or exposed. Cut to 2015, there was 736 million. So almost 8 to 9 times of 9 times the number of records that were exposed just 5 years back. Now, you might ask what's the situation after 2016? We have AI, we have ML, we have a lot of next generation stuff that is going on. Well, it's no different, because as you can see, it has just increased. And the pandemic We are unfortunately in a current health pandemic, but this cybersecurity pandemic has been going on for a lot of for a hell lot of time. And if you look at here, there some of these organizations were breached again and again. So even if they have implemented a control, uh, they have been breached again after a few years. Now, point in case example is Marriott Hotels. It was breached in 2018, and cut to 2019, it got breached again, wherein the records were stolen. Now these records are, they can be company records, but a lot of them are your and my records. We trust these organizations to keep them safe. um, uh, you know Sometimes it could be one of the 6 or 7 reasons, but at the end of the day, your and my data is lost, and the consumers are at the suffering end in most cases. And if you see, these names are big. You expect a Facebook or a Twitter, or a Marriott, or a Capital One. Closer to home, Kareem, just last year, all these organizations are big names. They are not the next door, smaller medium organizations. Even they get attacked, but these organizations, you expect them to have the state of the art controls. But even then, they get breached. Now, why is this important? I just like to give you a number. Maybe some of you would have asked what happened in 2018, for example. Well, 2018, the number of records. Now, records is everything. For example, it could be my name, my credit card number, my social security number, my ID number, my passport number. All of these is personal records, right? Um, Close to 4.5 billion records were actually stolen only in 2018, and 2019 it was even higher than that, right? So this is a chart that I actually pulled up from one of the websites, which actually gives you a breakdown of the breaches, the type of breaches, as well as the industries which got breached. And you can see they are everywhere. Like, for example, the entertainment industry also got breached. Like, who expects to probably hack an amusement park, right? Or a cinema hall? But then data is there as well. Even they have exponential growth of data. Even they have personal information of a lot of us. When we go for a movie or when we go to an amusement park, we do swipe our credit cards, right? So all of that information. So it could be anything. It could be a healthcare sector. It could be a government sector. It could be an entertainment sector. All there are different industries, and all of them are in some way or the other, breachable or hackable, right? Now, why am I telling you all this? Because a lot of it is at stake. A lot of things can are lost. A lot of damage is caused when any organization is breached. It is not a good situation. It's not a happy situation at all. And the reason is, the company reputation goes for a toss. Right now, for example, if you're trusting a brand that you shop with, maybe a retail chain, tomorrow if it gets breached, you as a consumer will be very skeptical to again do business with that particular brand, because you're not sure whether your data will be safe again, right? So the company reputation gets hit a lot. Everyone these days is feeding on negative information, correct? And once this is out, it just, in the days of social media, it gets viral. Any organization gets breached, it's viral within anyone realizes it, right? Imagine the damage that it can cause to the company's reputation. Loss of credibility, as I mentioned. I will not do a business again with someone who's not able to keep my data safe. What is the guarantee that the next time it will not happen? What is the guarantee that if it happens, whether they can keep my data secure, or how will they ensure that they fix the damage that has been caused to me, either financial, or it could be social or mental, it could be anything. So the credibility by the consumers or the customers is lost for the organizations. Loss of jobs. Now, a breach could affect an entire organization, or it could affect a segment of an organization or a function of an organization. For example, if a particular business group has multiple business chains, and if the attack only happens to one single function, it doesn't mean that the entire organization is suffers, so but that function could end up being closed down, or which in turn would mean loss of jobs for the employees for that particular business function. Or maybe if it's a big group, it could end up the CISO or the CDO or the CIO, or even in some cases the CEO losing their jobs, which is not a good situation again to be in. So a lot of jobs have been observed or have been seen to be lost when any organization gets breached. Fines for non-compliance. Now, all of us would have heard about regulators, which lay the groundwork for any for data protection or information protection. Right now, these could be Saudi ECC, it could be the GDPR, it could be ISO, it could be SOX, it could be PCI, it could be HIPAA. Based on what industry you are in, there are different compliance regulations for these industries. Some are driven by the government, some are driven by the industry verticals. Now, it's a good thing to be certified by these organizations, because in front of the consumer, it adds another layer of confidence that yes, these organizations have the controls that are required to secure their networks. But on the flip side, if these organizations who are in the process or are compliant still get breached, they end up paying through their neck a lot of fines. Like for example, I was reading a report. The minimal fine for GDPR till date is 10 pounds or 50 pounds or something like that, but the maximum is 5 million or over, or even a higher number. Like Google, for example, last year, they had to pay fines because of not being able to properly ensure that the customer's data is protected, and in Europe they got fined by GDPR. So that's a lot of money for some organizations. Maybe an organization which is a multinational can afford it, but just imagine the plight of an organization which is regional or local. If they get fined, they could end up closing down the business. So a lot of it is at stake, even from a compliance regulations perspective. Lawsuits, like if someone loses my data, there are high chances that I might even end up suing that particular organization, because I have trusted that organization with my data. My credit card number is stolen. The money has been siphoned off my banks. My bank is supposed to take care of my private information. If they cannot, if they lack the basic controls, then I have the full rights of lawsuits. And imagine these organizations, if there are lots and lots of consumers or employees, if all of them file the lawsuits, it's a big damage apart from paying fine for the non-compliance as well. Intellectual property laws. Now, there are organizations who manufacture stuff. For example, it could be a manufacturing organization, it could be a software development organization. They all have intellectual property. They all have that one thing that keeps them ahead of the competition. Now, this is called intellectual property, right? Is this data or this idea is only patented for that particular organization. Imagine if that is lost. It could be lost by an attacker hacks that organization, takes the data out and then puts it on pastebin to sell it to competition. Or maybe there are some organizations who do this on purpose, right? So there could be many ways in which an organization can have IP loss. Now, if they lose that one thing that sets them apart, or keeps them ahead of the competition, the loss is huge for them, right? So intellectual property loss is also at stake when an organization gets breached. Now, I talked about breach, I talked about hack, I talked about attacks, I talked about cybersecurity incidents. We all can categorize this as an incident. It could lead to a breach, it could not, but at the onset, everything is an incident. Now, what is an incident per se? Now, let's see at the definition of incident. An incident is any event that could lead to loss or disruption to an organization's operations, services, or functions. Now, there are two parts to this definition. The first part is the damage. It could be a loss or it could be a disruption. A loss could be permanent, a disruption would be temporary. Okay. Then the second part is, it could be an organization's operations, which is a small, everything for that organization. For some, it could be some services, maybe, for example, and if it's a manufacturing organization, maybe their supply chain is affected, or it could be a function. Maybe one. In a chain of companies, maybe one organization is breached. So an incident could be anything. It could lead to a loss or disruption of one or multiple functions within an organization. Now, what is incident management? So anything that we do to manage these cybersecurity threats is called an incident management. It is not only about how to detect an incident by using certain technology or tools that are available, but the most important thing is, what do you do with the learnings that you have taken? So incident management is all about how you can implement or how you can mature the security posture of your organization, so eventually in the future you become more and more and more secure. As you have seen from the slides, if any organization is hacked once, there are chances that it can be hacked or breached again, right? So it's a journey. It's not like you implement something today and everything is taken care of. No, you have to constantly enhance your incident management process. So the activities to identify a threat, analyze a threat, mitigate an existing threat, as well as correct the shortfalls of a threat. So next time this incident doesn't happen again, or if it happens, you are protected. Um, this entire mechanism is called incident management. Now, there is a team that is responsible for incident management. It could be, some call it the Computer Incident Response Team, or CIRT. It could be just called as an Incident Management Team or Incident Command System. These names are interchangeable, but they all eventually mean the same. Now, we've talked about incident, we've talked about incident management. Now let's talk about incident response. Yes, an attack has happened, or you see that there is something suspicious that's happening within the organization. What do you do with it? So you respond to incidents. Okay. Now, what is incident response? It's a process by which any organization prepares, detects, contains, and recovers from a suspected cybersecurity breach. Okay. So anything that you do as a plan to actually prepare for any eventual cybersecurity breach is called an incident response. And the plan that you actually use to implement an incident response or trigger an incident response is called the incident response plan, which is what we'll be talking about more as well in detail in our next slides. So incident response is the action. Incident response plan is the document that allows you to take the actions. Now, it's not only technical. Incident response is a broader term. It encompasses not only one department or a cybersecurity department or a SOC department of an organization, but there are multiple stakeholders to it, which we will talk about. There are multiple things that are involved in an IR plan, or when you build an IR plan for your organizations. Now, what is an IR plan? Now, an IR plan constitutes an incident for the company, and provide a clear guided process to be followed. So, for example, in an IR plan, you define what are the incidents that might impact you, and how do you recover from those, or how do you address those incidents, or how do you action when an incident happens within your organization. So it's a document that is probably your guide when you need it most at the time of incident. It allows you to channel your operations in an optimal way, so you recover from an incident causing the least amount of damage to the organization. Okay. Moving on, an incident response is not just one stage. There are multiple stages, involved in an incident response activity. Now, it's a circle, as you can see. As you can see from the image, it's not. It's a journey. It's not a destination wherein you end up and that's about it. No. as and when, because hackers don't sleep, so even we don't have to, we cannot sleep. We have to ensure that our controls are always enhanced in a way that the response is made in such a way that the minimal damage is caused to the organization. So what are the stages? The first stage for any incident response is preparation. Now, you might ask, how do I prepare if there is no incident? Well, you have preparation could be by implementing the necessary tools that to an extent can protect you against any cybersecurity breach, right? So you have to be prepared for it. Preparation also means what are the actions that you will take when an incident is detected. So those actions could be probably escalating it to the right team member, probably communicating with your own peers, probably communicating with your manager, whatever that could be. um, or even from a technical perspective, what are the tools that are required, for example, when an incident is detected. The second phase is identification, which is very important because you need to identify what is that incident, whether it's a false positive, whether it's something that you need to immediately act upon, whether it's a high priority incident. You can prioritize your incidents like critical, or high, medium, low, depending on who are they, what is it impacting, and how is it impacting, and what could be the eventual damage that it can cause to the organization. So you can identify the type of incident as well. The most important thing is containment. Yes, you are under attack, but then what? How does a security analyst, he has the technical knowledge to contain an incident, but is it the right way to do it? Does it have to be haphazard? Does it have to follow a process? Does he or she ensure that the communication is done to the managers or to the peers or to the department that we are under an attack? What could be the containment? Containment could be, probably it can be a multiple of actions. It should not be only one action. It could be a combination of multiple actions to contain an incident. The next stage is eradication. Eradication is basically how you completely ensure that this attack or this incident or this breach has been stopped. A recovery from that particular incident. Recovery could be, if a machine is compromised, maybe reimaging that machine and deploying it again in your production. It could be a user account that needs to be, password needs to be changed, as simple as that. Recovery could be multiple things that ensures that business is back to normal in a way that functions are back to normal, the services are back to normal. So recovery could be one or multiple things based on the incident. And then the last but not the least, the lessons learned. Lessons learned are very important. Everyone learns from their mistakes. We are humans, bound to create mistakes, and then there's technology as well. So you need to ensure that whatever lessons you have learned in that previous breach or the current breach, you ensure that you implement those controls in a way that the next breach can be avoided. Now it could be probably taking the indicators of compromise and updating your IPS or your SIM tool, for example, or your firewalls to block those indicators of compromise. Or it could be also be that how did you respond to an incident? Whether you escalated it a bit too much or you did not escalate it in the right time. All of these learnings are very, very important, because the next time when it happens, you are well prepared for such an incident. Okay, so these are the different stages, and again, these lessons learned are again put into the preparation phase, and then you follow the cycle again, because it doesn't stop. That's why it's a cycle. So why do we need an incident response plan? As I mentioned, an incident response plan allows for the smooth functioning of an organization's critical components during an incident. Now, as I mentioned, there might be one function that has been impacted, but doesn't mean that the whole organization needs to suffer, right? So an incident response plan will tell you what exactly needs to be done and how it needs to be done if and when an incident has been detected. It covers the technology part, it covers the process part as well, but everything is documented in the plan and it's ready for you to implement it. And incident response plan is not a security analyst's job only. It's an organization's mission statement that drives that particular IR plan. Why it is important? Because it has been observed that there have been organizations who don't have a foolproof incident response plan, or they have an IR plan, but that piece of book or document is lying in the shelf and no one referred to it because it was developed some 6 years or 7 years or 2 years back. So having a plan and not using it, as well as not having a plan, is more or less the same. What has been observed is organizations who don't have an IR plan, they have ended up causing more damage to themselves than the breach itself, right? And how, I will explain to you in the coming slides. Now, the incident response plan, it's important also because it actually allows you to measure the functioning or the capabilities of your IR team. Not everyone is perfect. Everyone is learning over a period of time. So when you form an IR team, during the first incident, they might have, the team would have executed in a particular way. During the second incident, they would have action in a different way, right, taking the learnings. But how do you measure this? Now, a lot of tools allow you to measure the capability of your incident response plan. Some platforms allow you to measure the time to detect and the time to respond to incidents as well. Now, why is this important? Because you can set KPIs for your IR team. You can tell them that, as an organization, because I'm an e-commerce organization, I have to be back up. My services have to be back up within X amount of time. Now, as an IR team, I need you to build your plan that you recover my services within this particular time. Okay, so when an organization mandates that, an organization can also measure those metrics using tools that look at different scenarios, and then give you the time for detection and the time to respond to incident response to an incident. So an IR plan needs to have the ability, or it has the ability, to give you those metrics as well, so you're well prepared for the next incident, when if and when it happens. So now, moving on, what are the components of an incident response plan? The first component is, how will an organization respond to incidents? Now, this is like a broader level of document which tells you, when an organization, when an incident is detected or a breach has been detected, A, B, C, D things needs to be done, and in this order. The order cannot be changed. Yes, it can be, there could be some modifications, exceptions are always there, but by and large, the order needs to be mentioned according to the plan, because this plan has been tested. Um, an IR plan also gives you the guidelines of what needs to be done in each phase of an incident response. So, for example, phase one could be, first analyze the incident, investigate it, look at whether it's really an incident or not, whether it needs to be escalated. Second, what is the type of incident that needs the trigger of an IR plan. Third, who needs to be communicated to, and what communication needs to go out to the customers or to the consumers of that particular organization, right? So everything needs to be documented properly, to the lowest level in an IR plan, so it becomes a handy document for any organization. In olden days, pilots used to carry the manuals in the cockpit, based on certain steps. They would refer to these manuals and then take the necessary actions, right? Now we have a computerized system, but previously it was like that. So you can consider an incident response plan in the same way. Another example that I can give is, unfortunately, we are in a situation these days wherein incident response in a healthcare sector needs to be fine-tuned for a lot of countries worldwide. Nations who are not prepared for it are suffering because of COVID. Nations who had a robust healthcare, who had a robust plan, and knew how to respond to it, and that's why they could recover better from a particular pandemic. So incident response could be anywhere. It could be security, or it could be your day-to-day life, but you need to have a plan to ensure that you can mitigate any risk that has happened to an organization or a city or a nation in general. Coming back to cybersecurity, one key component of an incident response plan is who are the personnel involved. Now, we talked about the incident management team, we talked about the incident response team. Now, who should be part of these teams? Whether they should be the internal employees only, or whether certain functions of the IR team can be outsourced to a third-party organization who specialize in these services, or the full function needs to be outsourced. But it could be any one of these three. Okay, it could be in-house, it could be partly in-house, partly outsourced, or it could be totally outsourced. But the people who will be responsible for it needs to be identified during the planning stage itself. So, and not only that, but what will these people do when an incident is detected? So every role and responsibility for these personnel needs to be properly documented in your IR plan. So whenever there is an incident, you are ready with who to communicate to, who's responsible for a particular action, and what is he or she supposed to do as part of this action, right? So all of this needs to be documented, and it's a key component of the incident response plan. Most important thing is, what is the communication strategy? Now, it's very important that as an organization, you communicate properly to not only your employees, but also to the external uh, public, what happened during this incident. What has been observed is organizations which take a back seat and don't implement the communication strategy are actually taken in a bad light. The credibility gets affected. Because over someday or the other, that particular reason will come out, which will have more damage than the previous thing itself. That's why organizations who are open, who communicate well, is always end up limiting the damage that has been caused to them. But the communication strategy also needs to be properly defined. Like, not anyone and everyone can communicate internal or external. There have to be certain people, certain stakeholders, so certain owners of this particular process, who will only communicate. For example, it could be a PR agency of the organization, it could be a PR department of the organization, it could be the CEO himself or herself, it could be this CISO, whoever is responsible and can deliver the right message, needs to be needs to be properly documented. And not only that, how a communication should happen within an organization also is an important. For example, if an incident is detected by a SOC analyst, who does he or she needs to communicate to? Once he has done his or her investigation, they need to communicate it properly to a right channel. Even that should be documented in an IR plan. Now, one of the key components is which I've already mentioned is the learnings. Learnings are very important. That's why we keep on hampering upon this particular word. You need to ensure that whatever you have observed, discovered, learned is documented, and your IR plan gives you the ability to implement those learnings. Okay, so next time a similar type of breach could be avoided, right? So learnings is very, very important key component of an incident response plan. One of the things probably should be up the order in the slide is, what are the assets and what are the types of incidents that that will affect your organization. These needs to be identified. Like, assets could be anything. In some cases, in some terminologies, an asset could be a job role as well, or asset could be a device, it could be a server, it could be an application, it could be a workstation, it could be a laptop, anything that the organization owns in terms of technology systems. Those could be termed as assets. Even non-technology system, for example, in the case of a manufacturing organization. So these assets needs to be identified. Not only that, they needs to be prioritized as well. So you might have certain servers or certain devices which have high priority than the others. Okay, now the cost of those devices getting breached, or the risk that they pose to the organization, will be more than a lower ranked asset. Okay, So it's very important to identify your assets. It's very important to classify your assets, and it's very important that you put this information in the incident response plan. So as a security analyst, you can classify an incident based on the asset that has been targeted by that particular security breach. Okay. Second thing is the type of incidents. Now there are so many different type of attacks, but not everything, in the near term at least, could be applicable for you, right? And not everything can be covered, but it's very important that you cover the broad range of security threats that you think might impact you as an organization. Now it's not only those brute force attacks or DDoS attacks. It could be the complicated APTs as well. How you consume all this information, how your technical team consumes or technology team consumes all this information is also important. It could be that they have implemented certain incidents today, but then there has been an advisory that a particular hacker group is trying to target an oil and gas or this organization industry. So how can you be proactive and implement those controls immediately, so those incidents are covered by you even before they impact you? So incidents needs to be identified and always put in the incident plan as a key component, because those will help you when that incident has happened. You know what steps needs to be taken, or whether those steps are already taken by your organization or not. So yeah, moving on. Pre-planned definition. Now every incident plan has a pre-planning stage, which involves the incident management charter, basically nothing but a workflow of of multiple things. It's like how, when, and what is needs to be needs to action on an incident. The team itself, which we talked about, the computer security incident response team, who is there in the team, what is their role and responsibilities, whether they are internal team or external members. Everything needs to be defined properly, as well as the reporting structure. And incident response team does not follow the standard reporting structure of an organization. Sometimes they report directly into the board or to the CXO, depending on the criticality of the organization and depending on the criticality of the incident itself. So all the reporting structures is also defined as part of the pre-planning stage, for an incident response plan. Now, what are the requirements of an incident response plan? We talked about the components of a incident response plan. Now we'll talk about the requirements of an IR plan. Uh, the key requirement is adequate and proper preparation for an incident. Adequate means you are well prepared. You have not left, or I would say you have left minimal gaps. There is, it's always better if you have covered everything, but minimal gaps are left, and that you are properly prepared. Now, I would like to give you an example here away from IT cybersecurity. Now, everyone or most of us would have been part of a fire drill in our buildings, right? Now, what is a fire drill? It's nothing wherein it's nothing but a simulation of what would happen. Let's say, God forbid, there is a fire in the building. What are the steps that needs to be taken? So the drill does nothing but it replicates all the steps as if a fire has really happened within that building. It could be from signaling the alarm. It could be ensuring that the people leave the building in a structured manner. They don't use the lifts or elevators. They use the stairs. They come down. They then everything is ensured that they assemble in a designated location during the event of a fire. Then the moment the alarm is pressed, there is a call that goes to the fire brigade or civil defense, who then reach the site. There is an ambulance just in case of any injury. So all of this planning is done, but then it's important to know whether this plan works or not. That's why the drills are actually done on a regular intervals, after every 6 months or 1 year, just to ensure that the plan still is applicable and valid. And then you might have also heard about the armed forces doing their own drills. Now those drills are also just a preparation, in an unfortunate incident of an attack. How does the Navy or the Army or the Air Force respond to it? So even those have drills. So drills are very important, and that's why even cybersecurity organization or a department needs to have their own drills, right? We have heard about blue teaming or red teaming, penetration testings, etc. All of these are done to ensure that our controls are stronger. Now, there is a drill for an IR plan as well, which ensures that every stakeholder who's defined in that plan, is part of the drill, and then they act as if they're acting in a real-time incident. Okay, they have to carry their duties as if an incident has really occurred. Now, why is this important? It's similar to the fire example I gave you. It's important because when an incident happens, you know what needs to be done. And not only that, a drill also allows you to improve. If you think there is some lag, you can actually improve on that and implement those controls. So whenever that incident has happened, you have taken care of that particular gap. So proper planning, proper preparation is very important, and needs to be put in an incident response plan. One of the other requirements is what are the methods to detect an incident. Now, it could be human driven, like what my colleague Ashok showed you last night. The threat hunting capabilities of logarithm, wherein he searched for processes, he searched for applications, or you saw on Sunday my colleague Rami demonstrate to you how you can actually, using logarithm or using any next generation sim platform, do threat hunting or look for anomalies within the organization. Uh, or it could be machine driven as well, or a combination of both. Machine driven is wherein the platform itself detects anomalies. You've heard about behavior analytics, you've heard about baselining, you've heard about machine learning, anomaly detection. So a lot of things like these are driven by the machine as well. So detecting an incident can be a mix of both, for an organization. So once you have detected an incident, you need to define the methods to analyze an incident. Usually what we have observed is it is human driven, because as an analyst, what needs to be categorized as an incident in most cases. In some cases, you can let the machine escalate it as well, but usually we have seen it as human driven. So those methods also needs to be properly defined in an IR plan. And these methods can vary according to incidents. Some incidents might be automatic detection, some could be manual detection, some could be automatic analysis, some could be manual analysis. Similarly, once it is detected, how should we respond to it from a technical perspective? Okay, now response could be, if a host is compromised, how do you isolate that host? It could be automated, it could be manual. So all of these things also need to be properly put into the incident response plan. It could be containment, it could be mitigation, whatever you want to name it, but then it needs to be defined. Communication and measurement metrics. You need to have a chart that actually tells you what is the communication that you need to follow as an organization during an incident, and this needs to be part of an IR plan as well. And then again, talking about learnings are very, very, very important for any incident, and they should be. You should have a mechanism of incorporating these learnings in the IR plan. Okay, now building an IR plan. Now, an IR plan should be set up to address a suspected security organization within a security incident within an organization. Okay, you just cannot have an IR plan for anything and everything. You need to identify why you're building an IR plan, and it will be different for different organizations. So that's why an IR plan should address those specific security incidents only. Every incident follows a certain set of phases. I will explain to you in the next slides what are the phases of an incident. But it is very important that your IR plan caters for each and every of this phase or procedures during an incident. Now, what are those phases? Now, the phases are preparation, detection, identification, analysis, containment, eradication, recovery, and post-incident. Now this is an excerpt from NIST. I'm sure everyone would have heard about NIST. They have a very good white paper around incident response and incident response procedure and plan. I would recommend everyone to go on the internet and read about it. um, uh, a lot of organizations have used this procedure or this mechanism from NIST. I've also shared a link on my slides, which I'll show it to you at the end. But NIST has defined a very good set of procedures that are part of every incident response, right from preparation to post incident. Okay. Now, what is the timeline of an incident response? Now, let's visualize that we are in the midst of an incident, or we will be slowly be at one of our organizations is probably going to be attacked by a cybersecurity incident. Now, what is the timeline looks like? First is an incident has been detected, right? Now, analysts, as I mentioned, could detect an incident either manually or automated way. Once an incident is detected, that analyst needs to determine an action. Now, this action is determined on multiple fronts. First is what is the type of incident. Second is whether it's a false positive or not. Third is what are the assets that have been targeted in this incident. Fourth is probably what are the category of an incident as well. So based on these 4 or 5 points, you need to determine the action that needs to be taken from an incident perspective. Um, Fifth is, should a response be triggered? At this junction, the security analyst needs to have the know-how whether an incident response needs to be triggered or not. How does he or she do it? They refer to the IR plan. They refer to the document that they have built, and in that document, you will see whether this particular incident needs a response or not. If yes, the next action is to trigger the IR plan. How do you trigger the plan? You escalate to the right people. You ensure the necessary stakeholders are aware of it. You know that the communication is flowing within and outside the organization in a much better way. You know that you are taking the necessary actions as well to mitigate that incident. Again, as I mentioned, every action that is part of the plan that you have documented needs to be executed as part of this phase. And then last but not the least, the most important thing is business continuity. Yes, you as an organization, it has got breached, but then it's very important that you come out of that particular incident very quickly. You recover very quickly to ensure that your business is running. Large organizations which you have seen in my slide got breached. Then they got breached in a most devastating way. But then a lot of them also recovered from it, and they continue to do business as normal. So it's very important that the outcome of an IR plan should be business continuity. Now, this slide just talks about the different stakeholders. Now, this is a small group of people. It doesn't encompass everything, but some of the key personnel who could be part of your incident response plan are the decision makers, usually the board or the executives. People who are responsible for communication could be your marketing or your PR team. And then, of course, people who are responsible from a technical perspective for recovery or mitigation will be your SOC or your help desk team. So depending on your investigation, if a machine needs to be re-imaged, then it will be done by the help desk. If an action needs to be taken, wherein it could be resetting a password, or it could be blocking an IP, or it could be anything. Some recovery mechanisms can be taken by the SOC team themselves. So depending on what is the recovery, what is the mechanism, the team could be either SOC or help desk. Around it, there are multiple different personnel involved. If you are under a certain regulation, you might have to involve your legal team. Or you might have to ensure a communication is passed on to the ICO or to the regulators properly. So there are a lot of moving parts around this core team that forms part of your incident response. But in broad way, if it's within the organization, these are the key teams that will be involved as part of your incident response. Now I'll give you an example in the next slide of let's visualize an incident wherein a suspicious user activity has been detected, and what are the steps in an incident response that we could take as part of this particular activity. Now, let's say a suspicious user has been detected so the first stage is notification. Analyst notices a suspicious user login. It could be a VP has logged in from a different geographic location altogether, wherein you know that he or she is already in the office, right? So this could trigger a suspicious activity. Or you have seen concurrent authentication attempts of a power user from outside from two different locations, or you have seen one of your admin accounts there was an authentication activity that was observed outside, or just in your free time you were probably checking one of those have I been on website, and you put in an email address, and you have observed that one of your email addresses was breached either on LinkedIn or probably one of the third party sites like Pastebin or Gmail or whatever it is, but you have stumbled across that information. So notification is the first stage wherein an analyst will come to terms that there is a suspicious user activity that was detected. Then he or she verifies it, whether it's really abnormal or whether it's a false flag. This is very important to identify, and which will also define your next course of action. Categorization. Now preserve that evidence, because that is very important. Your auditors will ask for evidence. So how do you preserve the evidence? It could be in the form of a log. It could be in the form of a memory dump. It could be in the form of a network traffic dump. It could be anything, but that evidence needs to be preserved for every incident. Not only that, you also have to categorize the particular incident and ensure that this particular incident is a one-off. Okay, it has happened to only one user, or whether it's an enterprise-wide activity that you have seen on multiple users. Next is isolate or mitigate. How do you ensure that this particular incident is mitigated? Either you can isolate that user's machine, maybe a certain malware is using that user account, or you can probably reset the user's password, so you can you are sure of that you have mitigated that risk. Then rectify, review the policies. What went wrong? If you have a password policy of 10 characters, alphanumeric, uppercase, lowercase, special characters, etc., but still it has got breached. So what went wrong? You need to review your policies again, and then ensure that you harden the systems even more and make it more difficult for the attackers to try to compromise the user again. And then not only that, but block any indicators that you think might affect other users. Okay, so it could be the same indicator. Maybe he or that attacker is not successful with this user, so they will try it for some other users. So you need to ensure that you actually block the attack at its source itself. Lastly, the communication. Now, if it's a power user, if it's a super user, if it's a privileged user, there is a separate set of communication. If it's a normal user, with a least privileged user, it's a separate set of communication, right? So based on that, you need to channel your communication strategy as well. Communicate to the user that their password is being reset. Communicate to other stakeholders, depending on the criticality of the asset or the credentials. And then of course, if it's something which has caused real bad damage, and if there is no other option, then you also, as part of your mandate, you need to ensure that you bring this to the notice of your local regulator, that there was a security incident within the organization, and these are the steps that needs to be taken. So this is a small example of how an IRS plan gets kicked in during an incident of a suspicious user. Okay. Now, I've spoken a lot. I'll just do a short recap, which is my last slide. Just to again tell everyone, maybe someone would have joined late. Information security, as you know, it's a journey. It's a journey towards being secure. It's not an end goal. You have to enhance your processes. as you go over a period of time, you have to constantly implement the necessary tools, the necessary processes, or even the necessary people. You need to have skilled resources as well to ensure that your plan is put into the correct phases and the correct way. Tools are just an enabler, so you'll have all the tools, they help you in the journey. You need tools, not that you don't need, you need all the tools as well. As my colleague Rami mentioned on day one, tools, people, process, and technology, all three are really key, and tools help you in the journey. But an incident response and an IR plan is is the capability that ensures that your tools make your organization secure. Tools cannot work on their own. You need to make them work. You need to define a plan. You need to define the people as well who will work on it, and all of this can be streamlined using an IR plan, using the process that you have defined that can streamline your people, process, and technology. With that, as I promised that I will share with you some resources, and these are the links and references that you can look into: the NIST framework, the SANS, the Blue Team Handbook, the Field Manual, as well as if you really like the data breaches site, you can go to this. You can go to the world's information is beautiful site and search for world's biggest data breaches, and you can get that information there as well. This is part of the slides which will eventually be shared with you. But again, thank you so much for the patient hearing. We will proceed to a demo. Now, what I will do is this demo will use logarithm platform, and where I will show you how you can use a next generation tool um, and be a key component of your incident response plan. As an analyst, how you can streamline your entire incident threat lifecycle management using logarithms platform, be it not only the response or detection, but also the process part of things. So logarithm demo will be an enabler into this, and also it will also give you a sneak peek into what the CTF will look like tomorrow. So there might be some things which I'll touch base, which will be important for the capture the flag event that will that we are conducting tomorrow. So with that, I will stop my screen share, and then I'll move to the demo, and I'll share the screen again. Yasir?
Yes, Engineer Zubair.
So I'll just move to the demo. Okay.
Are we gonna broadcast this or?
Yeah, I'll broadcast. I'll just share the screen.
Okay.
Is it visible?
Yes.
Yes, visible.
Okay, brilliant. So so moving on to a short demo of the logarithm platform and the capabilities around incident management, incident detection, as well as response, which is one of the key components, as I talked about, of any IR plan, right? And you can define in your IR plan that there has to be a tool that facilitates this process. So logarithm is one of the tools that can actually help you do that, which I will show you in a short demo, probably of 20 minutes or so. Now, as you can see, there are two scenarios, which I talked about in my presentation. There is an automated threat detection scenario, and there is a manual threat detection scenario as well, of even analysis and detection both. Now, the logarithm platform allows you to address both the scenarios and both the use cases. My colleagues Rami and Ashok have already demonstrated that to you. But just to recap, you can use the platform to do manual threat hunting. I'll take a simple example. I'll not go into too details, wherein, for example, if I want to search for any activity, from Ukraine, because there has been an advisory that certain attackers from Ukraine are targeting my organization or similar industry which my organization belongs to. So how I can do that? I can just from Logarithms platform, I can easily search for a particular country, which will be source country in this case. It could be any country. Let's say Ukraine, for example. Okay. Oops, didn't my autocorrect. It could be Ukraine, and then I can do a search on it, right? So I want to look at what are the activities that I have observed within my organization over the last 24 hours, if there are any. If there are not, well and good. If there are any, then I can take the necessary actions, right? Now this forms part of a scenario wherein a manual activity is being done by the platform. Now the platform also has ability wherein we can it can automatically detect it. Now those type of detection and analysis form part of our analysis, which is called our advanced analytics engine. Now this engine can in real time detect the different type of scenarios that you have defined that would be key for your organization. Now let's pick an example which looks at an inbound SSH port. Now this particular alarm or incident was detected wherein an SSH connection was identified or discovered from outside the organization. Okay. Now I can look at the different fields. I can look at the different aspects of this particular incident. I can also drill down into the logs to identify and analyze. So as an analyst, as part of my incident response phase one, I can just drill down and see what has this particular alarm triggered by, or what has it caused to trigger. What are the activities that have been discovered from outside the internet? So as you can see, it's clearly something which has been detected by my sandbox and SSH connection to an IP address which is internal to my organization. Right. I can identify it more. I can do more analysis by looking at the logs. It has been detected by the Logarithms network forensics engine, wherein an SSH communication was detected from outside, and these are all the fields associated or information associated with that network traffic. Now, clearly, it is something that I need to act upon because this is definitely not allowed by my organization. I can then immediately open a case. Now, remember, we talked about preserving an incident. Now, how do you preserving an evidence? How do you preserve an evidence, or what is an evidence that I talked about? In our case, in this incident, evidence are the log messages that form the core of my investigation, that tell me that this particular thing has happened or has really occurred. Okay. Now, as an evidence, I can immediately within logarithm open a case, which is my incident management, wherein I can click on a new case and then give the case a name. Now, all of this can be automated as well, or it could. What I'm showing you is basically a manual workflow, right? Now, as part of the case, I can give the case a name: inbound SSH connection. Um, uh, Give it a medium priority because it's still early stages of an investigation. Specify a due date. Now, how do I know this is a due date? Because my IR plan, which I will refer to, will tell me that any priority 3 incident can be mitigated within, let's say, as part of my SLA, maybe in another 4 hours. Okay. Now, in that case, I need to ensure that this particular incident is mitigated by 1 a.m. Okay, which is the time. Again, sorry, this is 13th. Yeah. So after 4 hours or 5 hours of my time, and then I can add a summary. Summary could be inbound suspicious activity detected. Okay. When I click on save, what happened is not only has a case been opened from an incident management perspective, but also I can add the particular alarm to that case. Now, as you can see, the case history, I can add this alarm. Sorry, not this one. I can add this alarm immediately to this case, and I can say add to current case. Now what happened is, not only I've opened a case, but I've also preserved the evidence in the case, and this can be stored for your based on your retention policy. It can be stored within the platform itself, so you can go back in time if you want to look into an incident, what has happened probably a few months down the line. You can go back and still retrieve all the information into it, right? Now, this is one part of it wherein I have preserved that evidence. Now, the next and the key component is, if an incident is detected, my IR plan tells me that there are certain actions from a mitigation perspective that I need to take. Now, what are those actions? Okay, clearly my platform allows me to define those actions. Now, as you can see, the first action is, in which we call it a smart response within logarithm. There could be multiple names, but we call it smart response. The first action would be query these IP or domain name. Now this could be automated. So the moment an SSH connection is detected from outside, my platform will query an external system. In this case, the action is more from enriching my information, because my log will not give me everything, but I need more enrichment or more data to substantiate my claims that it is an incident. So immediately my platform can automatically query a Cisco umbrella or probably a virus total or a threat intel platform and get more information about this particular IP address. Right? If I click on approve, it will be approved. If I click on deny, the action will not be taken. If I add to case, this information will be added to my incident management as part of my response plan. Now there is another action. My IR plan tells me that such an incident you need multiple actions, so you can clearly mitigate everything and leave no blind spots for the next time. So what is the next action? The next action is, this IP, which is the source IP, needs to be permanently blocked on my firewall, because I know from my query to the third party system, in this case Cisco umbrella, that this is suspicious, right? So I need to block it immediately. So I can again this particular action is automatically put into the platform, so it gets blocked again. Create an incident, a high priority incident. Here I've created it manually, but a high priority incident can automatically be created by the platform itself. And then last but not the least, quarantine that particular endpoint or isolate that endpoint. So if it is a malware, you can immediately isolate it. You can prevent the malware outbreak within the organization. So there are multiple actions that needs to be taken. Now I am constantly referring that an analyst will read out the IR plan, etc., etc. But can logarithm or can a next gen platform allow you to do that? Well, in logarithm's case, yes, you can build certain aspects of your incident response plan within logarithm itself. How you do that? We call it as playbooks, which is not, there could be run books, there could be playbooks. Those are nothing but a set of procedures that needs to be followed when an incident is detected. It could be a subset of your IR plan from a technical perspective, of course, right? So here I can automatically add a playbook to this incident, or I can, as part of my analysis, I can do it manually. So when I click on add playbook, I can add a suspicious activity playbook, okay, or an unauthorized access playbook, whatever, depending on the activity it is, to this particular incident. Now here, when I click on add, you can see there are close to procedures associated with this incident. Now, what are the procedures? Now, every analyst might not know what needs to be done when an incident is detected, right? So this plan will give them the ability to go step by step into the journey of an incident. So in a proper way, you can identify, mitigate, as well as ensure that the incident is not spread across different functions of the organization. So what are the procedures in a suspicion and an unauthorized access activity? First is determine if it's an incident, which we have done. Okay. Second is acquire or preserve the evidence, which I talked about, which was the second phase of our IR plan: acquiring, preserving an incident. Third is disable the affected user account. So if a user is there in question, if a machine has been infected and there's a single user that uses the machine, immediately disable that particular machine, or probably block that IP address, as we have done as part of the alarm. And then last but not the least, again, learning, provide feedback, provide the learnings from this particular incident, because this is something that has already happened in spite of your controls, but the next time it should not happen. So provide a proper feedback into the platform in the form of blocking the indicators of compromises, or ensuring that the controls are not loosened for certain individuals, or multiple things, whatever are the learnings from, or block the SSH port, ensure that all services which for SSH are actually blocked on the firewall, and users can only use a VPN, for example. Okay, so there could be different learnings for different incidents that you need to ensure that you feed into the platform, and next time if such a thing happens, take all these actions automatically as well. So there could be multiple learnings from an incident. Now, I mentioned an IR plan, or a tool can also give you the ability to measure the to measure the functionality of your incident response team. Now, within Logarithm, you have the metrics that can actually give you that flexibility. Now, these metrics tell you that hey, Mr. Analyst, you had detected this incident the last time within 1 day, but this time it has increased. It should be the other way around. What is the reason? The reason could be maybe you did not implement the learnings properly, or you did not, which means that you did not do your job. What is the reason here? Okay, but these particular metrics or matrices give you that visibility into the functioning of your incident response team from a technical standpoint, at least, because if the technical team kicks in at the right amount of time with the right plan, then the other wheels of the train automatically start functioning easily. So here, as you can see, we qualified this as an incident within 36 minutes. We detected it within 36 minutes. If we have responded to it already, it will tell you that that this particular incident was responded to by your IR team or by your security analyst team within 7 minutes, etc. And then you can also close or mitigate that particular case, and then take the learnings into the platform. So you can have a single orchestrator, I would like to call it, that can help you channel the multiple team members, channel multiple actions, and ensure that the end goal of business continuity is actually preserved for your organization. So this is a way in which Logarithm can assist you in your incident response plan, or drive your incident response plan from a orchestration and automation perspective. So yeah, so that's all from me for today. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. But for now, I think Yasser, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zubair. Mr. Zubair, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, sir.
All right. Would you like us to take some questions?
Sure. Yep. Let's go ahead.
Okay. First question is, are there any endpoint capabilities like taking a memory dump or having remote access on a suspected machine?
Yes, I mean, there are capabilities wherein we can natively take a memory dump or integrate with other tools to also do these capabilities. It could be, for example, an EDR tool wherein we can initiate the action on the EDR tool to take the memory dump of that particular system. Remote access, again, it's something that that you can configure to do it. Wherein you can take control of the system and take the necessary actions. So to answer your question, yes, we can take memory dump or remote access.
Okay. And there's another question about the CTF tomorrow, but we will answer this later. We'll wait. We'll give them a minute or two for any more questions. What's the difference between incident response and disaster recovery?
Good question. So Disaster recovery could be in normal terms. Disaster recovery can be associated with systems. For example, if your core workloads are down, how do you recover from that? In a broader term, anything could be a disaster. I would say they kind of in some cases they overlap each other. The key of for incident response is how do you respond to security incidents, and disaster recovery could be a part of it, because an incident response can have multiple aspects to it. Not only a system shutdown or a system or an application down. So I would say a DR could be a component of an incident response.
Mr. Zubair, thank you very much for your time today.
You're welcome, sir.
الأعزاء المتابعين، شكرا لكم لانضمامكم لنا في سادس الليالي السبرانية، تقدم لكم من الاتحاد السعودي للأمن السبراني والبرمجة والدرونز بالشراكة مع الشريك والممكن الرقمي STC. ندعوكم مجددا بعد كل بث وقبل كل بث كذلك للمشاركة في المسابقتين المتزامنة مع هذه الليالي السبرانية، مسابقة أفضل ثريد مستمر أو أفضل سرد مستمر تشرح فيه في كل محاضرة ثريد مستقل تشرح فيه أفضل أو أكثر المعلومات اللي عجبتك في هذه المحاضرة عبر هاشتاج سايبر نايت. إذا دخلتوا هاشتاج سايبر نايت في مشاركات جدا جميلة لخصت كل الأيام الماضية، وبإذن الله في ختام الليالي السبرانية راح نستعرض أفضلها، وراح يفوز فيها 3 أشخاص بجوائز مقدمة من الاتحاد السعودي للأمن السبراني والبرمجة والدرونز. وكذلك المسابقة الأخرى المقدمة من الاتحاد اللي هي مسابقة الاختبار الشامل بعد انتهاء كل ما نقدم في 15 يوم المخصصة لهذه المبادرة. راح يكون في اختبار شامل وعليه كذلك 3 جوائز. ندعوكم دائما للمشاركة في هاشتاج سايبر نايت. إذا كان في أسئلة ما أسعفنا الوقت أن نتشارك معكم أجوبتها هنا، اسألوا، في ناس جميلة تحب تساعد وبتجاوب أسئلتكم هذه في الهاشتاج. وهذا زي ما نقول دائما انه هو الجزء المخصص للنتوركينج، الى ان نلتقيكم بعيدا عن الفضاء السبراني والفضاء الافتراضي في العالم الواقعي في فعالياتنا اللي دائما ما نخصص فيها وقت للنتوركينج. نشكر لكم حضوركم الدائم لمحاضراتنا، وحابين برضو نضيف انه في اي شيء او اذا كان في اي محاضره انتم حابين نتكلم عنها او اي مشروع ان نسلط عليه الضوء خلال الأيام القادمة، إحنا موجودين وقريب من الهاشتاج ونسمع كل شيء فيه أو نقرأ كل شيء بإذن الله. شاركونا أفكاركم، وبإذن الله إحنا ما وجدنا هنا إلا عشان نحقق اللي نقدر عليه منها بإذن الله. إلى أن نلقاكم غدا في بث جديد من الليالي السبرانية. دمتم بحفظ الله. السلام عليكم.